Welcome back, everyone, to the House of Hustle podcast here on Sports Radio 810. We are presented, as always, by our friends at Charlie Hustle and Capital Investment Management. A big thank you to Chase and Greg over at Charlie Hustle, as well as David Garrison at Capital Investment Management. My name is Jarrett Sutton. I'm joined, as always, by Stephen St. John. The brackets are out. March Madness is here. Stephen, it's time to dance. How you doing?
You know what, I'm doing very well because the ball is tipped. And there you are. You're running for your life. Jarrett, you're a
shooting star.
A shooting star.
Yeah. I've listened to that song a few times this week already, just to kind of get my mind
really?
right. And
did you know that was originally supposed to be with the Super Bowl?
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best renditions of that, by the way, if you YouTube I think it's the 09 One Shining Moment. That's one I replay every year. Why? Because that's when Marcus Denman hit the three-court shot against Memphis.
Right.
And, it's a great one. So, anyway, One Shining Moment. There'll be some interesting, I feel like, opportunities to capture some of these one shining moments in this tournament by how the bracket came out. Let me ask you this. You've covered the tournament every Monday after Selection Sunday. There's always something, right, of who got snubbed. Sometimes it's warranted. Sometimes I feel like it's not. And this year I feel like the committee was kind of all over the place, but it's a little warranted just because of the bid stealers with the upsets in the conference tournaments that kind of led to this. Did you feel that, or where were you at in just the overall bracket?
I didn't like it because the teams on the bubble that I was rooting for to get into the tournament, because for whatever reason I want to follow them, didn't make it. I wanted Providence in because of Kim English. No Providence. I wanted Indiana State in because of Robbie Avila and his goggles. They don't get in. I wanted St. John's in because that's my last name. And Rick Pitino is must-watch TV. They're out. So, teams, Virginia, Michigan State,
Yep.
Indiana State would have been great television. And I loved watching the Missouri Valley Championship between Indiana State and Drake. That's one of the best games I've seen this year. And so I was irritated. It's like you said, they were all over the map. It's hard for me to believe. I've heard people say that the Big East was the second best conference in the nation, and they ended up with 3 teams.
Yeah.
And that was the most enjoyable conference tournament that I watched. Let's be honest, the Big 12 tournament, Iowa State was dominant. That's maybe the most dominant run I've ever seen in the Big 12 tournament. But the games were not compelling.
No.
It was blowout, 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 blowout. I went Friday to the semifinals, and I liked watching Houston because they're so good, but they beat the hell out of Texas Tech. And Iowa State did the same thing to Baylor, and I was shocked at how handily, even though it was basically a home game, Iowa State defeated Houston. But they weren't compelling games. I thought the Big East was fun to watch. There's a lot of, like you said, all these bid stealers, 5 bid stealers around the nation. There's more compelling basketball. But I just, just for the teams I was rooting for, there was a bunch of misses by the NCAA tournament committee. And on top of that, and part of it's because Missouri went 0-19 in conference games. But even overall locally, K-State doesn't get in. Missouri's not a factor. Kansas is down. They're the horror of 4 seed. I had to hold Nate Bucatey's hand through this thing because he doesn't know what this is like. So Selection Sunday didn't hold the same excitement for me. Now I'm filling out brackets. I'm excited about that. That's always fun.
Mm-hmm.
But it was weird. And I thought that Iowa State got heavily screwed. I thought they really had a compelling case to be the 4th number 1 seed. And then they end up being the last 2 seed and get shoved in there with UConn and freaking Illinois, right? And Auburn as a 4 seed when they're the number 4 overall team.
It's a monster.
In Ken Palm. And you look at that right there. Conference tournament championship from Big East, from Iowa State, UConn, Iowa State, Illinois. and then Auburn all won their conference championship. And who's the 5th seed?
Power conferences too.
San Diego State. They were in the national championship last year. Who's the 6th seed? BYU. They were supposed to be the best 5th seed, but they had to be dropped to the 6th line because they can't play on Sundays. Yeah. And so I'm like, who did UConn piss off? Who did Iowa State piss off? What a great region that is in the East, but I just thought there was like weird stuff all over the place.
Agreed.
That's a long answer. Sorry.
No, it's great. I mean, it's pretty much accurate, assesses kind of my thoughts. The interesting one for me, you to touch on the Big East part, the fact that they had 3 teams in
That's
is
wrong,
why
right?
it's wrong. And I mean, I don't mean to like go there, but I just was I was shocked. The Mountain West is the reason for this a little bit. New Mexico had to win the Mountain West tournament to get in the dance. They were the 7th best league according to KenPom. And I know KenPom isn't, the Bible of basketball. It's not like it's, in gold, something that you have to go by. But it's pretty accurate more times than not when it assesses offensive rating, defensive rating, overall rating compared to the other teams, and it weighs in heavily the conferences. And for the Mountain West to get 6 teams in, that's a historic year for the Mountain West to get that many teams in when you're the 7th best league. You mentioned St. John's and Providence. I agree. Like, both those teams have a case. I think the other team is Seton Hall in this conversation.
And I saw Seton Hall up against Mizzou at T-Mobile Center up close.
Yeah.
Seton, I was really impressed.
Yeah, because I didn't realize this, but I was going back through some of these teams, and Seton Hall finished 13-7 in the 2nd best conference. That's a good conference, like to win 13 games.
Providence had 6 Q1 victories.
Yeah, and then you look at a win against UConn. UConn only has 3 losses. You have a win against Marquette. Seton Hall does, and then they were 6-2 against other Big East bubble teams.
They should be in instead of Virginia. Easy.
I mean, yeah, that's just like, it's wild to me. And I know Jay Billis was going in on Pitt, needed to be in, and there was a conversation about Oklahoma. There were some teams that, they have a conversation, but to me, Seton Hall is like a no-brainer lock. Right. And then
Oklahoma, I went to Lebo and asked him. He's our Oklahoma guy. He said no, they didn't do it. Yeah, so I'm off that bandwagon.
Yeah, he had a long conversation with me as I walked in about how they didn't deserve to be in. But anyway, so we look at it, and I think we agree that the Big East was. I think the first 4 is also fascinating because we see a few 10 seeds. Again, usually that's an 11. So that was very interesting to me. Just looking at the first 4 and how that's going to play out. You mentioned Iowa State, 10 quad 1 wins. They had the 4th best resume, and they were the 8th overall in terms of the seeding.
And they're digging them for their non-con. But you know what? Here's the deal. To me, a coach knows his team.
Yeah.
Right, and is trying to. What are you trying to do? You're trying to get your team to play the best basketball in March. And sometimes you know that you need to build confidence in your team. Or sometimes you know that you need your team to go out and be tested. I don't know. I just feel like we're focused so much on the non-con, and the committee just totally ignores what went on in the conference tournaments.
Yeah.
Like, how could you ignore what Iowa State did in the Big 12 tournament? K-State had to win. That's a must-win bubble team. Beat them by double digits.
Yep.
Then they play a top 15 Baylor team, beat them by double digits. Then they played the number 1 team in the nation and beat the hell out of them.
I don't know how it doesn't warrant that. Yeah,
right.
Agreed.
I feel like we should put more emphasis in the conference tournament and teams like even Auburn, the teams that go out and show that they're playing their best basketball at the right time. As opposed to, how different things are in the non-con.
Yeah, and you never know when you're scheduling the non-con. I love when people are like, you got to schedule your non-con so strong, and you got to have all these great teams in your non-con. You never know how that's going to play out.
If you would have scheduled Missouri, you'd have thought, that'd be a good one. Now,
I know, and you look back, and I mean, Pitt's probably like, man, we lost to Missouri at home, and that's probably the worst loss they could. That alone is a little bit alarming for Pitt.
Or like Seton Hall probably, hey, we went to Kansas City and beat Missouri.
Yeah,
this will look good. And then they're like, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. So you just never know how the non-con will end up playing a factor as your resume kind of gets through the portion of the conference slate and these teams kind of start beating up on each other and overall records and strength of schedule, the net rating. But I'm with you. I think the takeaway for me is like the conference tournaments. I've always felt this, and I went through this as a player of, does the conference tournament, and we won 2 in my 4 years. We won 2 conference tournament championships.
Humble brag.
Humble brag. Does that really play any sort of impact in your overall seeding in the NCAA tournament? Because I felt like we were deserving of a 1 seed in 2012, and we ended up being a 2 seed. And then you look at, really, to me, the conference tournament is if you can get the upset and you can go on a run like, say, Oregon winning the Pac-12 tournament, and they get in and steal a bid, that to me makes an impact on the overall seeding and the overall tournament bracket. But I feel for Iowa State for sure. Like I know TJ's not going to be using it as any sort of excuse. They've had a great team and they're getting ready for the tournament and their matchups, and they'll take whatever seed they get. But I think they're kind of questioning, like, and I think too, just teams that got in with like Virginia and Michigan State, is the name recognition thing a real thing?
Probably.
You know, like North Carolina being a 1 overall when I believe they were the 9th team, best team, like that to me is a little bit of a question mark. So before we move on, let's touch on, you mentioned Indiana State. I think it needs to be said, Indiana State is the highest ranked net team to ever be left out of the field. Like that to me was very alarming. And then to your point about
I wanted to see my big baby boy in the goggles.
I know.
Making shots, raining threes. Why can't I
Would you rock the goggles if you had to, hoop and lace them up?
I had rec specs.
Oh, did you?
I played.
I think the rec specs were like a good look. Like they've lived on and withstood the test of time.
I've never told you this. What was the? Man, you might be too young for this. Do you remember the street basketball tournament they used to have in Kansas City?
Oh,
where there were hoops set up all over downtown, and then they moved it out to Arrowhead.
Yes, but I can't remember the name of it.
Hoop Fest.
Hoop Fest.
Like
Yeah.
So I was in it a couple times. I could street ball now.
Street ball was real deal.
I could street ball, and me, my friend Caesar, and a couple of us, and I would wear my rec specs, and there'd be some giggles or whatever. You know, I'm not the classic basketball build, but guess what? Leave me open from 3, and I'm making you pay.
Make it rain.
I'll make, I'm thinking
can't beat a shooter.
I'm hitting about 38% from the floor, okay? And I could make some jumpers, all right? Yep. And I had those. And I used to play.
You were like a little Isaiah Thomas,
And on top of that, extremely physical under the boards.
You heard it here.
Extremely physical. I'm a foul machine. If they had a big guy, and clearly I'm not going to outread about him, I would hack the hell out of him, and by the end of the game, he wouldn't feel so good.
Right.
And so I would play, but I would play with my rec specs. I was protected from elbows and scratches and everything else. So that's what I like.
But it's the boxer in you meets basketball player,
I wasn't backing down.
Yeah.
But I like when I see a kid in goggles. I mean, this kid means business.
He's good.
Right.
He's good.
What's wrong with you?
I know.
The selection committee.
Don't.
He could have been a star of March, and you robbed all of us from that.
Given your team is not in the tournament, right?
What's that?
You would.
By the way, no, they did not get robbed.
The entertainment value for you is based around, you want to see the best players that have the most intrigue. You want to see those teams in the tournament.
Okay, you're going to yell at me for this because you know college basketball better than I do right now. I made the point the other day. I was grumpy on Monday. I said, you know what? I'm just not feeling it. I wasn't excited about Selection Sunday. I was legitimately more excited about the women's selection show. Mm-hmm. And the biggest reaction that anything got out of me from both the selection shows was when I saw Iowa and a possible matchup with K-State in the Sweet 16, because they played 3 times over the past, just over 12 months, and K-State's won 2 of them. I'm like, what? Oh my God! Oh, that's how awesome would it be in the Sweet 16 for Iowa and K-State? But then I'm like, what are they doing to Caitlin Clark?
Yeah.
And then the 3 seed was LSU. I'm like, selection committee, do you not want Caitlin Clark in the Final Four? You give us a team that's beat Iowa twice in the past year or so in the Sweet 16, and then you got their kryptonite. LSU is a 3 seed down there.
They're trying to get every matchup of hers to be a tough one.
Right. So I was all pissed off about that.
Yep.
But anyway, like we talked about Juju from USC, right?
Bucket. Yep.
You talk about the personalities that we're getting to know in women's college basketball. Paige Beckers, right?
Yep.
Selena loves her. My daughter loves her. And even the coaches, whether you like them or not, big-time personalities. There's more personalities, I think, that are attracting me to watch the game in women's college basketball this year than the men's.
Yeah.
And I'm sure part of that's the transfer portal and everything else, but, I mean, the star power. And so, yes, part of it is like there's a certain amount of guys that I want to see. You had me all excited. Slip my name again with Providence.
Devin Carter.
I was like, I can't wait to watch him in the tournament.
Yep.
Jared Sutton just talked him up.
Yep.
I couldn't watch which Avila in the tournament. And then,
Yeah.
so yeah.
I got a guy for you, though.
Who?
The University of Nebraska is in the tournament.
Oh, I love him. Dude.
Casey Tamanaga.
I saw a highlight. I saw a highlight package of him last night. It was like 3 minutes of him basically looking like Steph Curry.
Oh, man.
Step back threes, side step threes, headband. Yes, headband.
And Nebraska hasn't won a tournament game.
This is this make me feel dirty. I'm rooting for Nebraska.
Absolutely. How cool would that be?
And then they matched him up against Texas A&M when Trev Alberts just left Nebraska
Right.
to the 80 at Texas A&M.
Right.
And Nebraska and A&M are matched up in the first round in both the men's and women's tournaments.
That's crazy.
That
is crazy.
Like Trev Alberts, like, what are you
Speaking of selection committee,
like, Trev Alberts, like, what are you doing? Leave me alone. But yes, that's a guy that I want to watch, and I like Fred Hoiberg.
I do too.
I would like to see them win, so I'm in on that.
Yep.
Yes, and so you look for, you know who else I like? I like the coach's kid from Drake.
Oh yeah, Tucker Devers.
Every name is escaping me right now.
Absolutely.
I'm very old.
Very good shooter.
But I loved watching him drop 27
Mm-hmm.
in the Valley Championship game, and I like that team. And oh, by the way, selection committee, we better get it too. The possible second round matchup. What's the state of Iowa going to do if Drake plays Iowa State?
Oh, my
people fighting in the streets.
My wife went to Drake.
Oh boy.
And
she cares, doesn't she?
She cares.
She loves
all of a sudden she's a big fan of her alum status is really showing right now. Like she is fired up.
She'd be all fired up if they played Iowa State, though?
She's asking me, she's like, "You took Drake, didn't you?" And I'm like, "Uh-huh, I sure did. Yep. I know the drill. I know the drill."
I got Drake and Iowa State in the second round, and I'll shut it down. See, I can't wait to watch that game.
Yeah.
That would be my most anticipated second round matchup if anyone
Can I give you the matchup? And it's a down the road Elite 8 matchup that I would love.
What?
And that is Arizona, North Carolina, the Caleb Love Elite 8. Mm-hmm. That would be sweet too. Caleb Love, who took North Carolina to a national championship game, who is Pac-12 Player of the Year.
Did he?
I think I know where this is going.
He was just toying with Missouri.
Yeah.
He was never going to Missouri, right?
Yeah, he committed to Michigan before that even.
I know, but they kept, like his dad, they kept acting like Mizzou was a fact. Well, they were never.
No.
They just used Mizzou, right?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I think it's pretty fair. So, anyway.
I don't love the fact that Caleb did that, but he can play.
He can play. Yes, he can play.
That's why I
He's
wanted
pretty skilled.
him.
Okay, so the funny thing to just the top 4 seeds real quick and these regions, if we're taking that KenPom, which I feel like a lot of people have gone to, of just these KenPom ratings.
I feel like the selection committee took it and lit it on fire and then threw it away.
So the East, speaking of how loaded the East is, if you take the top 4 seeds in the East, Southwest, and Midwest and can combine those, the East is 20 in the KenPom, and the Southwest and Midwest is 41, 42, and 43, respectively. Meaning the East top 4 seeds combined gets to a combined rating of 20, which is ridiculously high. I mean, the competition in the East, if you're looking at the best, side of the bracket that's going to be the most competitive and the toughest bracket, it is the East by far. I'm a little bit surprised by that they didn't scatter around some of these teams. But the East is going to be loaded. That's kind of the side of the bracket to watch. And yes, the UConn Huskies are on that side as the number 1 overall seed. My question to you is, outside of UConn, because I think a lot of people are picking UConn to repeat, as they should. I think the best team in the country, best record, Big East champs, Big East, I did as well. Do you look at any other teams, whether 1 seeds, 2 seed, 3 seed, 4 seed, do you look at any other team that you seriously think has a chance to compete and actually win this tournament?
So I'm trying to pay more attention to analytics.
Like it? Kim English is not.
Right, and he
Just so you
thinks,
know.
can I say it on the?
Yes, absolutely.
Kim English says analytics are bullshit. Kimmy, if you're listening, I
Tip of the cap. Tip of the cap.
It's,
He's not wrong.
But like
He's
all
not
these different like parameters, it's like, if a team is top 25 scoring efficiency and defensive efficiency, like since 2002, every national champion except one or two has fit that criteria.
Yep.
And there's one about adjusted offense and adjusted defense. A lot of those arrows are pointing, outside of the obvious, pointing towards Creighton
yeah.
as a team to pick.
Absolutely.
And so, and
It's
then
a great team, sneaky team.
the other team that's not a 1 or a 2 that those numbers are pointing at is Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
But Auburn's in that death trap of having to take on UConn in the Sweet 16,
Absolute
which is
monster.
why it's stupid that those two teams have to smart playing the Sweet 16. Because, like, I would say UConn outside of them, but I would say Auburn, I would say Iowa State, I would say Creighton.
Yep.
And teams like that. But I can't say I can only pick one of the Iowa State, UConn, and Auburn because they're all together
Mm-hmm.
in the same region, in the same bracket. And so I've got Creighton going to the Elite Eight to take on Purdue. And I feel like I wanted to pick Creighton, but I feel like at some point Purdue has to break through.
Yeah.
But then again, you know what? Maybe not because,
They have
Norm Stewart, how many great teams did he have? Right?
So many.
How many
Too many to
teams
count.
Should have gone and
Of different eras, spanning different eras.
So my point is, just because you're a hell of a coach and you have teams that continually knock on the door, that doesn't mean you ever get there. And maybe that's Matt Painter, and maybe I wish that upon him.
Yeah.
Because of what he did in Mizzou. But they've got one of the best players in the nation. They've had so many disappointments. I keep thinking, well, maybe this is their year. But then again, maybe it's not.
Yeah. They're the team that has the most added pressure on their shoulders going into this
Anything
tournament.
short of a Final Four is a failure.
Everybody is watching Purdue to see if they fail, to see if they get upset.
I know we're jumping all over the place, but so tell me this. What if Purdue plays a healthy Kansas in the Sweet 16?
Hunter Dickinson against Zach Edey. That's a blast. Braden Smith, DeJuan Harris. That's a blast.
Well, like if you're Purdue, you don't want that.
No, if healthy, right? There's a key, connotation there with Kansas of like
they might be relatively healthy by that time if they were to face off.
Kansas is like I don't want to call them an underdog because they're not an underdog. They're a 4 seed, and it's Bill Self, and it's Kansas. It's 34 consecutive tournaments. And
it would scare me if I was Purdue.
Go ahead.
Because look at who they beat.
Yeah.
They beat Tennessee. They beat UConn. They beat Houston.
But here's the thing with Purdue, though. They did this last year. They had a bunch of big wins, and then they go to the tournament, and they get upset. Now, you look at their potential – well, first it's either Montana State or Grambling. Then it's Utah State and TCU. TCU we've seen. TCU is kind of all over the place. They can be great one night. They can be really bad another night. But they have shooting. They have athleticism. That is an interesting matchup. Purdue should kind of take care of business, get out of that first weekend. They should. And Indianapolis, it's very close in proximity. But the Kansas factor here, let's say if Kevin McCullough's fully healthy and if Johnny Furphy can get back to playing what we saw from Johnny Furphy in like January, how he played against Houston and Allen Fieldhouse, how he played at Oklahoma State, these type of games where he kind of teetered off towards the end of the conference slate at the end of the regular season. Like that's a tough cover for Purdue in terms of guarding those type of players. That's a tough matchup, I think, for Purdue. And that's a game that I hope kind of plays a factor. I think Purdue wins that game. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt here. But it would not surprise me if Kansas beats Purdue. And it would not even surprise me if Purdue isn't there in that matchup. If Kansas is in that matchup and Purdue isn't. Like, that's not going to be a big surprise to me either. But then as we get further along into that, Sweet 16 Elite 8, it starts getting really fun when you talk about Tennessee and Dalton Connect and Creighton if they were to match up. I have that matchup. Dalton Connect is one of the most lethal scorers in this tournament. Now he is kind of Tennessee's offense. Tennessee's defense is very good. Creighton, we saw their run last year. They were right there on the doorstep of getting to a Final Four. So they're trying to get back into this, and they have all the pieces to do it too. And like you said, when Creighton's making shots and Baylor Shireman's hitting, 6 threes, they are one of the toughest teams to beat. Saw them play UConn, and they were excellent against UConn. Just blew them out at home a couple weeks back. They're a very dangerous team in this region. But if you're Kansas or you're Purdue, the Midwest, there's a lot of these teams, their margin for error is very slim. And that, to me, is what's going to make it very intriguing of what team's going to come out of that Midwest.
Okay, so here's something interesting that I want to ask you, because you talk about name recognition, right?
Yep.
And some people are saying that Gonzaga got a better seed than they deserve because they're Gonzaga, right? And even though they haven't won a national championship, they have a history of success in the NCAA tournament. So let's say it's Kansas and Gonzaga in the second round.
Yeah.
How good – because let's just be honest. There's not a whole lot of people that have watched them in Kansas City because they haven't been as good as normal.
Yep.
And a lot of games are late. And so what kind of matchup would that be? Also, like Nate Bukaty, I know why he's doing it, but a lot of people are picking McNeese to upset Gonzaga because Will Wade, I mean, there's really nothing you can do to get yourself out of coaching in college basketball, right?
I guess not.
He's back at it.
I guess not.
But they're an impressive team on paper.
Yeah.
And it looks like that's a team that, I mean, there's always a 12-5 upset, and so a lot of people picking McNeese. Just take me through that, McNeese, Gonzaga, and then Gonzaga potentially against KU.
Yeah, so with Gonzaga and McNeese, it's going to be kind of the sexy pick of upsets is taking McNeese. Now, with Gonzaga, they lost their conference tournament to St. Mary's. The fact that they got to 25 wins, like their season at the start of it was not great, and they were able to kind of pull it together and kind of get through the rough patches of the adversity, and then went on a pretty deep run. They won at Kentucky, which was a big win, and that kind of kick-started what now is a pretty solid season for them. Now, it's not to the standard that they've been at in the past because they didn't win their conference tournament. St. Mary's really kind of ran the WCC this year, but they're still a 5 seed, and they're still dangerous. Ryan Nebhard, who was at Creighton last year, transferred back. Andrew Nebhard, his brother, was at UConn and now is an NBA player, was great at UConn, and Ryan's kind of followed suit. Ryan's a little bit smaller, but is so much better in Gonzaga's system because he needed to be in more of a structure. He's a very good passer, and he's a very good scorer, too. He's a little undersized point guard. So in terms of the matchup that could be with Kansas, it comes back to the DeJuan Ryan Nebhard matchup. Like, that would be really interesting. And then from there, Anton Watson is a 4-5 power forward. He can kind of play small ball 5. Very skilled, very smart, tough, strong around the rim, and probably I would say the guy to circle in a matchup like that because he's very versatile. And would it be KJ Adams guarding him? Could they take Hunter out of the game because they can stretch the floor? Anton can shoot it a little bit.
It's just so hard, too, because we don't know what the hell the Kansas is going to do.
Exactly. And there are 2 players for Gonzaga. Nolan Hickman is a really good, talented combo guard. Like, he looks like a point guard, but he plays the 2. He can make shots. He can put the ball on the floor. Like, to me, Kevin McCullough health guarding is critical to Kansas because he's such a versatile defender, and he can switch in these scenarios, and he could guard Nolan Hickman. He could guard Anton Watson. But the big factor, Gonzaga could stretch Kansas in terms of shooting, and that's Ben Gregg, their center, comes off the bench here and there, but he's been starting more. Spot shooter, pick and pop big, like bigs that can shoot, good passers, a team that's definitely connected. Now, the thing with Gonzaga, they don't have a great bench either, and Kansas doesn't have a great bench, so the matchup is pretty balanced. It would come down to, can Kansas own the paint, dominate the paint, rebound, not turn the ball over, which is pretty much going to be Kansas's DNA really in the tournament. If Kansas can make threes and shoot a little bit more volume threes, because sometimes their volume in threes are shooting like 11 threes in a game, and you're thinking they're their losses, the other teams doubling, sometimes tripling them in just 3-point attempts alone. And the 3-point shot is the great equalizer in the game. It's a modern day game, and Kansas plays a little bit more old school where they throw the ball inside. They have high-low action. They play pick and pop, and they use DeJuan downhill trying to find, the pick and pop roll and the short roll and things like that. So that to me is the interesting matchup for Kansas in this tournament is, can they shoot the ball at an effective level? Yes, they need to be healthy, but the shooting is going to matter. And to me, Gonzaga would give them a little bit of an issue because they can stretch the floor and they have 5 guys that can shoot the ball.
Kansas have any problems with Samford?
It's a matchup that like Kansas's side of the bracket, it benefits them. I do think with Samford, there's a couple things to say here, though.
They like to press and
they like to press. They force turnovers. They shoot the 3. They play with great pace. Like they're 6th fastest team in terms of like advanced possessions, meaning like they play with good pace, and then in the half court they really execute and slow down the game. They're 10th in steal rate. I think they're 40% from 3 as a team. They have 6 players that shoot over 40%. And then they have 4 guys that average double figures. They play a ton of guys, too. They have like a huge bench, play 10 guys over 10 minutes. So they can really dive into the bench. What happens if Kansas gets in foul trouble? Like that, to me, is a kind of a factor in this game. Because Samford's got a player named Makar. Makar is their best player. He's 16.6 rebounds, 2 blocks, shoots 45 from 3, 60 from the field. Like super efficient player. And maybe could take out Kansas from what they want to do. But the big factor is, again, if Kansas is healthy, they should dominate the paint. They should dominate the glass. They can play with pace, too, when Kevin's healthy and when Johnny's running the floor. They can play up-tempo when they want to.
Because usually Kansas eat those teams up.
Exactly. It could go either way. Either Kansas is going to roll in this game, or Samford will keep it somewhat close and dangerous if they're making shots and they're turning Kansas over.
And if they start hitting threes, like there's always the signal where a team, I feel like an underdog has a great chance. A bad sign for the favorite is when there's a possession and it's like 1 or 2 seconds left and they throw up and it's a 3 off the glass.
Yeah.
Like, oh boy.
Yeah.
There we go.
Right.
Like if they're hitting
an air
shots,
ball that falls in someone's lap.
Something dumb.
Yeah.
And so, who knows? We'll see. But it would be fun to see Kansas Gonzaga in the second round. Man, you talk about, I don't care. People throw blue bloods around, but what 2 elite basketball programs matching up in the second round, and maybe potentially KU against Purdue in the Sweet 16. All right, all that said, and then you got Creighton, the analytics darling, and Tennessee, who, man, Tennessee's another team that's a darling of the analytics.
Yep.
But good God, they look terrible against Mississippi State in the SEC tournament. All that said, who do you got coming out of the Midwest?
Out of the Midwest, I have Tennessee coming out.
I have Purdue, and it's ridiculous, and it's dumb, and I don't know why.
But I like it because I want that for Coach Painter, and I want that for Purdue to just get the monkey off their back.
I don't.
But I mean, I can see people want to see they want to see them get upset again. Like it is what it's what makes the tournament great. It's you want to cheer for the upsets and you want the underdogs and the Cinderellas.
I have Creighton beating Tennessee in the Sweet 16, and then Purdue and Creighton.
Yeah,
I will root with all my heart for Creighton, but something tells me Purdue is going to break. And also, my best friend Caesar's wife is a Purdue grad, and I want him to be happy in March because whenever they're upset, it's not good for him.
Not good. No, it's not good.
It's not good for him, and so I want him to be very pleased.
Yep.
So, Kelly, I'm rooting. If you listen to this, I'm rooting for Purdue, kind of, not really.
For you. How cool would it be, too, to see, like, second round Tennessee versus Texas, Coach Barnes against Texas? I mean, that's a great matchup.
Oh, yeah, but I have Colorado State winning the play-in and upsetting. You know why? Because actually, I'm against Colorado State because of their win over Frank Haith in Missouri a decade ago.
Oh yeah,
and also I got all hyped up over John Tanji, who Mizzou got from Colorado State.
Larry Eustache is a part of this conversation.
Yes,
How about that?
Now I'm mad at Colorado State. But even though I got them moving on to play in the second round, okay. Let me ask you about the South region.
All right.
Houston looked unbeatable until they played Iowa State and looked super beatable. But they're not 100%. You got Duke, who everyone is going to root against. Kentucky's a big name there. We've seen Texas Tech on the right day can beat anyone. Marquette is a big name there. Although I've seen, again, getting back to a 12-5 matchup, I've seen a lot of people picking James Madison over Wisconsin. And then, like you said, one of the most attractive 8-9 matchups is Nebraska and Texas A&M. I'm going to root for Nebraska because who likes Texas A&M except, they're too weird for me, except A&M. No one likes them. And so I'm going to root for Nebraska to win. What else stands out to you about the South, and then ultimately who you have coming out of the South?
Yeah, so, I mean, it starts with Houston being the one overall. To me, what we saw in Kansas City in that Iowa State game is we know how great Houston is defensively, and their defense could carry them to a Final Four easily. Like, they're that good defensively. Where I struggle is when they have LJ Cryer maybe miss shots or Jamal Shed can't get it going on offense, and they face a team that's very athletic or that is getting into the ball and physical, and that doesn't bode well in March when your offense can't be relied upon and you're trying to play catch up and you're trying to stay in a game that is against a team that's shooting the ball at a high level. We see it every tournament, every March. There's teams that catch fire, and can your offense get to that place? And it just feels like Houston's offense sometimes can just be, it's either they're great and they're rolling and their defense is leading to their offense and they're kind of free flowing, but when they struggle and they get stagnant and they don't make shots and they can't, penetrate the lane and they can't, make plays, when they get to that, especially with Jamal Shed, that's when they struggle. So just the number one seed, yes, they are so deserving of the one. They do make me a little nervous. Marquette is getting Tyler Kolek back, who has missed time with an injury, his oblique, and he's coming back. Marquette's a very good team. They got a scorer in Cam Jones. Oso Ighodaro is a super athletic 5 who can switch everything, who can pass. They got a solid bench of role guys. But Tyler Kolek coming back, big deal, because he's one of the best point guards in the country. So that's something to watch for in that too. Florida's dangerous. They're beatable, but they also, it wouldn't shock me if they pull some upsets this first weekend. They showed well in Nashville. They're a tough team. Duke's in this side of the bracket. They're a very good team. They have youth as well. They're young. They got one of the better bigs in Kyle Filipowski. So Duke is a very good team to look for. The Wisconsin-James Madison game, the reason why the 12-5 is such an upset here is this is a bad matchup for Wisconsin. Like, style of play in this game.
Everyone's picking against them. I wasn't going to, but I got James Madison.
The thing about this game is Wisconsin's going to have to let A.J. Storr go be a player. He's 6'7", a big-time athlete, big-time talent. They're a very system-driven team, as we know. They're a possession-by-possession team. They like to throw the ball inside. They have a 4-5 that's kind of intertwined where that paint can get kind of log-jammed. They're going to have to let A.J. Storr play in some space, I think, in a game like this. But Wisconsin's defense is very good, too. Tyler Wall's very good as a big, very good finishing big, rebounding big. This is a game of who's going to set the tone, who's going to impose their will. Is it James Madison making shots, showing their athleticism, playing with pace and tempo? Wisconsin's not going to be able to match that, especially if they get down. So that is definitely the matchup to watch in this side of the bracket in the first round. Once we start getting down the road, like my team coming out of the South, and I don't like it, but I think Kentucky's got so much firepower. They're young. They don't guard well at all. That doesn't bode well in the tournament. But they got 2 elite guards in Rob Dillingham and Reed Shepherd. Like, they're freshmen. They can shoot the ball. They can score at will. They defend. They got Antonio Reeves, who's a big-time shot maker as well. They have bigs and athleticism. They have a solid bench. But their defense has been very bad over I would say, the last month. And they're a little bit inconsistent. But when they're right, their offense is big time. They can outscore teams when they got it going on offense. So I like Kentucky because of that. It's not a great pick. It's the one team in my Final Four that I'm not really all that excited about picking. But I just think when I look at this, if I'm looking at just straight firepower and scoring and NBA talent and length and size and depth, like similar to how we always talk about UConn, like Kentucky has that. they're just not even remotely as close to consistent enough as UConn. So that's the South to me. Some good matchups, some good teams. Wouldn't surprise me either if Shaka and Marquette go on a deep run. Wouldn't surprise me either if they got upset either.
All right, let's take a quick look at the South. North Carolina's the 1 seed. I think a lot of people are thinking that perhaps Mississippi State could give them a run for their money in the second round if that matchup happens. Mississippi State has to take on Michigan State first. Another very sexy upset pick. Again, here we go to the 12-5 matchup.
Yep.
Grand Canyon and St. Mary's. A lot of people, including myself, picking Grand Canyon. Alabama is a talented team as a 4 seed. New Mexico, our man C.J. Moore from The Athletic has New Mexico going all the way to the Elite Eight.
Oh, great.
As an 11 seed, so that's interesting. Then you got Baylor. Nevada, I was reading one bracketologist said Nevada, it's one of the worst seeding jobs ever by the committee, that Nevada is about 14 spots lower than they should be as a 10 seed against Dayton. And then you got Arizona. I've got Arizona coming out of this bracket. I've got Grand Canyon and Nevada as double-digit seeds, and New Mexico, all as double-digit seeds winning opening round games. What do you make of the West and some of the things I just said?
We think alike. I got Arizona coming out as well. And I say that I just saw Arizona get beat by Oregon in the Pac-12 tournament. They didn't make shots and gave up a big lead, but they're a very good team, and I expect a couple of their players to play better than they played out in Vegas in the Pac-12 tournament. This side of the bracket, I'm with you. I got New Mexico in the upset against Clemson. I just saw New Mexico as well. JT Toppin is a really fun name. His brother Obi Toppin is in the NBA. JT is a super athletic 4-man. Donovan Dent is a point guard that can score it and is probably a guy that could be playing in a Power 5 league that is a big-time point guard. And then they got some scoring around those two, so New Mexico's dangerous. I like Clemson, too. They have a player in P.J. Hall who kind of very similar like a Dean Wade for local fans. Remember Dean Wade and how good he was. So I wouldn't overlook Clemson either, but New Mexico is the sneaky dark horse 11 seed. Grand Canyon as well. Like, this is kind of my upset side of the bracket. I have Grand Canyon over St. Mary's as well.
Really interesting program.
They are.
With Bryce Drew.
Their best player is Tyon Grant Foster, who was a transfer from Kansas, who has had a really just wild road, went to DePaul, had a health scare, medical scare, and now is playing off the charts, and big-time athlete from the Kansas City area. So really excited for Tyon Grant Foster to be in the tournament. He's had a pretty tough road throughout his college career, and great player, great kid, and so I'm excited for Grand Canyon. They're 29-4, and he's a big part of why they are that, because he just is like a freak of nature athlete, NBA type of athlete, and I don't know if St. Mary's can match that. I saw St. Mary's as well. If there's a player to watch, Aiden Mahaney and Alex Dukas from St. Mary's are very good players, fundamentally sound, big-time scorers. St. Mary's, too, very well coached. So a team that I know are hearing the noise, and they know that this first-round matchup, and again, they won the WCC, they beat Gonzaga, so they think they belong, and they know Grand Canyon's a good team. That's a tough matchup for them. Baylor on this side of the bracket, too. Scott Drew's had good success in this tournament. I wouldn't overlook them by any means. The Nevada-Dayton game, you just mentioned Nevada. I like this matchup for Dayton, even though Dayton, they haven't really had the resume of some of these other teams to warrant a 7 seed. So not really all that surprising if Nevada pulls this in the 7-10 matchup. 7-10 is just a tough matchup in general, and you never know what the 7 and 10 seed. It depends on the matchup, but I do think that Dayton can win that game. But if you look at the top of the bracket, like North Carolina as the 1, they're out of the 4-1 seeds. I don't know if they're the strongest one. Armando Bacot and RJ Davis, pedigree, NCAA tournament experience matters in this tournament, and those guys have it. They've played in the national championship game. RJ Davis can go off at any point, make shots. He's kind of like LJ Cryer, where he can just shoot it and score it at will. He's undersized. And then Harrison Ingram, who was a transfer from Stanford, is like a combo forward, big, strong, athletic, defends. He's been a great addition to North Carolina. But I think when you look at the North Carolina-Arizona matchup, which is my matchup in the Elite Eight, I just think Arizona has a little bit too much firepower. They have a really, really strong bench, and North Carolina really doesn't. And Tommy Lloyd has done such a fantastic job at Arizona in 3 seasons. It's amazing to see them back in the 2 line. And I think this is their team that can get to that Final Four if they stay the course. So that's the West for me. Some intriguing matchups, some upsets there. But ultimately, I got Arizona coming out.
All right, and we talked about the East, but let's get into who you think is going to come out of the East. Again, the best matchup, at least the one I'm looking forward to the most in the second round, I would love to see Drake take on Iowa State. Drake's got to get past Washington State first, and Iowa State, of course, avoid the upset against the Summit League champ, South Dakota State. And then as far as some of the other games, again, man, FAU, I saw Northwestern open up as a 1.5-point favorite. Now FAU's favored by 2. San Diego State was in the championship game last year. Auburn is red hot, and the analytics love Auburn. They're the number 4 team overall, according to Ken Palm. BYU is what's supposed to be the best 5 seed.
Mm-hmm.
Illinois just won the Big Ten tournament. This bracket is loaded. What do you think happens in the East?
Yeah. You can't go really wrong with, like, if you were picking the upset and you don't think UConn gets there, like Auburn, Illinois, Iowa State.
I wish Iowa State would make it.
Even if you get San Diego State in there, like, yeah, I could see that too. But here's the thing. I also go off teams right now that are playing their best basketball and teams that are really kind of struggling or have some injuries or maybe haven't played to the caliber, like FAU and San Diego State. Seen both those teams. They're capable. There's no question that, like, they could go on a run, but, like, they're not playing to the level of Iowa State. They're not playing to the level of Illinois. They're not
tournament
playing
experience. So they've got some guys
that's
been
true.
around winning.
Absolutely. So again, like, that part of it, they can go on. There's no doubt about it. That nobody's saying that they can't. But to me, like, how loaded this side of the bracket is makes that a little bit more alarming to me. Just because, like, Illinois. Terrence Shannon's just balling out right now. He had 40, I think he averaged 34 in the Big Ten tournament. Big-time scorer. And I mean, you look at Coleman Hawkins, who's like a 6'10", shooting, passing big, who can play, he's kind of can play all over the floor. Illinois rebounds the ball at such a high level. Quincy Guerriere is totally overlooked because he's like their glue guy he rebounds, he's tough, he can make a spot shot, he's athletic to switch. Like, Illinois' defense can be susceptible at times, but they rebound that ball at such a high level, like offensive rebounds. They just sometimes blow teams out of the water by how they rebound the ball. That matters in the tournament, limiting team to 1 shot and then getting yourself extra possessions by how you rebound the ball. It's a big tournament for Brad Underwood just because, this team with Terrence returning, Coleman returning, they got a lot of guys that just kept the core together to go on another run, and here they are 26-8 as a 3 seed. Yes, it's a tough side of the bracket, but, like, them against Iowa State, that's a big-time matchup.
Let's just dream a little bit here. Can you imagine if Iowa State made the Final Four? First time since 1944. And I know it's in Arizona, and there could be a potential matchup where they have to play Arizona if they made it, but still, you see how Iowa State travels for a conference tournament. I don't care if it's in Arizona.
Yeah.
They would take over that whole damn city.
Oh, man.
Right? But I mean,
I'm sure Phoenix is looking at that like, man, that'd be great for us.
And I'm going to root heavily for Iowa State here. But again, I mean, that's just for the emotional part of it, that would be tough to face because Drake could get hot and give them hell in the second round.
Yep.
If they have to take on Illinois or even BYU in the Sweet 16, and then they're going to get a difficult matchup in the Elite Eight just because it's UConn, it's Auburn, it's San Diego State. There's no easy path. There's so many good teams here. But what would be your worry for Iowa State? Because they just look so good in the conference tournament, but what would prevent them, short of just going up against a hot team? What would concern you about Iowa State?
It's the same thing I would say for Iowa State that I said for Houston. Now, Milan Momcilovic, a freshman, he's a great shooting big wing. Tavion Lipsey, Keyshawn Gilbert, like those guys are very good players. Their bigs do their jobs, and they kind of play both ends, particularly defensively, obviously. Like their bigs are great from a defensive standpoint. They get after you. They're physical. They limit you to one shot. They take away things that you do well. Their ability to game plan and strategize defensively is just big time. So, yes, their defense travels. I think if they face Drake or they face even a Washington State, they're just a little bit more relentless in terms of, I don't think a team can, like a Washington State or Drake, can really do enough against Iowa State's defense. So that's why I like Iowa State out of the first weekend. But then when they face possibly in Illinois, and down the road, if it's Auburn or if it's UConn, they're going up against significant talent in terms of offensive firepower. And if they struggle to shoot the ball or if they struggle to score it, and I just saw Iowa State play at Kansas State just a couple weeks back, and they got beat in Manhattan, and they really struggled on offense. I mean, it was an ugly, ugly basketball game. And, sometimes Iowa State can win games ugly. That's their DNA in the format. But if they're trying to get to a Final Four, it's very difficult, and it puts a ton of pressure on your defense to be just so elite when your offense can't match that. Doesn't mean you can't do it, right? Doesn't mean that Iowa State can't get there, but they're going to have to beat some teams that really are really good. UConn being one, obviously. UConn's the team to beat in this side of the bracket because they have everything, and they won it last year, and they are a machine in terms of when they make shots, and they have a big and Donovan Clingan, and they have a bench, and they have size for position, they have shooting, they have guard play. They really can do anything they want, and I think that's sometimes tough for a team like an Iowa State who probably doesn't have that type of level of talent and firepower offensively.
Okay, give us your official Final Four and then your national champion. Don't hold back.
All right, so Final Four right now, I like UConn out of the East. I have Arizona over North Carolina. Midwest Tennessee was a tough one for me just because it's a huge – Rick Barnes hasn't taken Tennessee that far. He's going to have to beat Texas, where he used to coach. There's a chance he's looking at Purdue or Kansas down the road. But I do believe in Dalton Connect. I do believe in their defense. Analytically, like you mentioned, they are so much better than they were years past. So I'm going to give them the edge to get out of the Midwest. Then when I look at, let's see, the South, I'm going Kentucky. And again, Houston's a team that could obviously get there. I'm taking Kentucky just because of that skill level, the offense. Wouldn't surprise me if Duke gets there, although I'm a little bit more high on Kentucky than I am Duke. And then in my national championship game, I got UConn over Kentucky. And that's my repeat champion. Right now, I think the bracket is open outside of UConn. I just think they're that good and that tough right now.
My Final Four is stupid. I have UConn, Arizona, Houston, Purdue. I don't know why I'm doing this. I mean, why I'm picking Purdue. It's ridiculous.
But a lot of people have picked Purdue. So
and it's going to be ridiculous, like mine is. And then I have in the national championship game Purdue and UConn, with UConn repeating.
I would love that national championship game, by the way.
Would you?
Zach,
I'd love it because then I'd win my bracket.
Zach Edey against Donovan Clingan.
Okay. Woo. Now, I'm not going to end on a sad note for Missouri fans.
Mm-hmm.
May I ask you just a quick transfer portal question?
Okay.
Okay. Let's go ahead and rewind. They say time is a flat circle.
It's true.
True Detective, all right? Years ago, I wished for a Porter brother to play basketball in Missouri. Years later, I wish for a Porter brother to play basketball at Missouri. I don't know how many Porters there are, but there's another one. Javon Porter is leaving Pepperdine. He's thrown himself into the transfer portal. He's 6'11", and he averaged around 16 points and 5 rebounds a game. You're a man of Columbia, Missouri.
Yep.
Can you tell me anything about this Porter? Can you tell me how many more Porters we've got to root for? Can I get this Porter at Mizzou? Is there what can you tell me here?
Come on home, Javon Porter. I think I'm a Mizzou fan. reached out to me. I thought it was hilarious. He said, "I'm ready to be hurt again."
That's right.
And I'm like, that's a great
me
way to
more
say
Porters.
it. Give me more Porters. Javon's. I mean, he reminds me of Jonte. He's not the level of Michael in terms of the shooting.
He's not thick.
stockier.
He needs to put on some muscle, maybe.
but he's very talented. Yeah,
Okay.
He's very, very talented.
So
player.
that would be that.
I think right now he's the top. I think he's right now, and there's more names. Portal just opened a few days ago, so there's more names to come. But I think at right now he's probably top 3, if not 1 top transfer in the portal.
That's an impact player. Then we
100%. Yeah.
We need the other guy.
Given what they had, come on. It's a game changer. Yeah.
So another guy just entered the transfer portal from St. Louis, former Class 6 Player of the Year in the state of Missouri.
Yes.
This big man named Terrace Reed Jr.
Yes.
He is in the portal.
Yes.
Shall I hope for him?
This is the hope. This is my hope right here. I'm going to get Steven really riled up now because
go ahead and talk about him.
Terrace Reed was a big-time high school talent. Went to Link Year Academy in Branson Prep School. Had a big year for Michigan. Strong, like SEC caliber
6'10",
strength.
270.
Very skilled, like fundamentally sound, great feet, great hands, great. But
I'm just bringing this up because he's St. Louis. But is there legitimate?
I don't know.
I
don't know yet, but there should be because the roster's probably more than likely going to be flipping, and they need to be in on a lot of these guys.
His nickname is Hoss,
and he is a Hoss for sure. I'm glad you brought him up because I know I think he just entered the portal. But
so I'm allowed to dream. It's March, people.
That's right. It's time to dream.
The team I follow went 0-19. You need to give me some extra space here to operate.
This is Mizzou fans dancing.
What if they added Javon Porter and Terrace Reed Jr. to the freshman class, and if they kept Tamar Bates, and kind of what they've got, and those were the two impact guys that they added.
If they added those two guys, they would be the biggest in terms of size, height, length. They'd be right now, if they sign those guys with the freshman class, they got to be one of the top teams in the SEC in terms of size.
And targets. I want those two. I'm not asking too much. And another point guard. And a point guard.
Yep. And T.O. Barrett, a freshman that's coming, he's a very good point guard.
Just give me a veteran point guard. That's all I'm looking for.
But Mizzou's going to this is the biggest thing right now for Dennis Gates going into year 3, knowing the pressures are going to be there to try to turn this thing around. He's going to have to capitalize in the portal, and it's going to be tough just coming off a bad year, but they have done really well identifying talent in terms of their freshman class that's coming in. Is a very talented class.
If you're talking about NIL money and who to throw it at,
those
guys, two would be.
No doubt.
That's where you're focusing.
And then all of a sudden you're a big team. Like you're a team that at the 4 and 5, you are pretty set.
Because it seems like that might keep Tanji and Caleb Grill. And even though I told you I was mad about him coming from Colorado State, if they're healthy, they help.
Because then Anner Boateng, who, by the way, is going to the Jordan Brand Classic and top talent. That means you're playing Anner Boateng at the 3.
Let's go.
And that is big. That is a big team.
And I'm back in. Every time I'm out, they pull me back in. That's all I want.
It's NIL college basketball free agency.
Terrace Reed Jr. and Javon Porter, and then meet me back here.
I need Steven to get back on this. It's been a tough year for Steven with the Mizzou basketball program.
I think it's just for Steven.
I know.
A lot more than
very true. Very true.
You know, there's on Saturday afternoons I'm watching Cotton Bowl highlights. People, I deserve some basketball. All right, that was I don't know what else you want if you're trying to preview the NCAA tournament. We just laid it all out there for you.
That's right.
But don't get mad at us. I already told you. I picked Purdue. Don't pick Purdue. I'm stupid. Okay, I've got them going to the national championship game, and I know it's not going to happen, but I'm picking it. I don't know why. I just went with my gut, and so that's where I'm at. So,
it's here. Dancing season is upon us. March Madness is here. Some big games ahead. We'll be breaking it down. I will not be going to any. I'm going to Austin, Texas this week. We'll be with our staff. We're doing kind of a postseason wrap with our scouts and our general manager.
When are you going there?
Going there Wednesday. Going there tomorrow.
How long will you be there?
I'll be there through Saturday morning. I'll come back.
So, as a staff, will you guys watch some games?
Yeah. We'll watch some games. We got some big games coming up on the Pels side coming up. We're fighting for the 4 seed. We do have an internal conversation with the brackets. Yes,
I bet that's a real one.
Yeah,
you guys
it's fun.
know what you're talking about.
It's fun.
And
It'll be good.
Is that the bracket?
This is the bracket.
That's the real one you gave us?
Yes, that right there. That's right there. Yep.
People want the real Jared Sutton bracket. Okay, tell people again about our wonderful sponsors, including Charlie Hustle. We need to go get our gear.
It's time. Yeah, I know. We've been saying that. We got to get over to Charlie Hustle and stock up on their latest gears. I know they got the quarter zips now in. Yep. I saw those.
That's right.
Those are fresh. So big thank you to the team over at Charlie Hustle. Chase McNulty, Greg Moore, just a great group of guys over there, and then David Garrison at Capital Investment Management. I know it's tax season right now, so big shout out to Capital Investment Management.
That is another edition, a March Madness edition of the House of Hustle. Jared Sutton, Stephen St. John, and remember, until next time, Kansas City is for hustlers.